Bye. My name is Josh Miller. I own Riverstone Kennels, and I've been training gun dogs for more than 16 years. I have field trialed, I've hunt tested, but at the end of the day, I'm a duck hunter. You might find that the duck in our Duck Dogs podcast is spelled uniquely. The UK stands for my British Labs. I love my British Labs. I love what they offer me, both as a part of my family and the high motor in the field. As you're going to find, I have some pretty special dogs. Follow along in our podcast series here as we talk about both in the field hunting and in the field training situations that will hopefully help you progress with your dog at home. Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Duck Dogs. I am your host, Josh Miller. And before we get rolling with today's special podcast, is we have a couple guests on, which I know is fairly unique for this show. But I feel like there's some insights here that will lead to some very interesting conversations. So before I introduce who we have, let me introduce who makes this possible. So thank you first and foremost to Eukanuba. Eukanuba is the presenting and the premium partner of this podcast. Eukanuba Premium Performance Sport 3020 is the blend of food that I have my dogs on, my dogs at the kennel and my personal dogs, especially as we're in the heat of training season. And then, of course, transitioning to hunting season. Just a fantastic premium quality food. If you're looking for something like that to put your four-legged hunting partner on, I would highly suggest Eukanuba Premium Performance Sport 3020. Also, thank you to Sitka Gear. Sitka Gear is your premium option for outdoor clothing, both in the field and your everyday wear. We wear it every day as we're out training, so it isn't just to keep you warm and comfortable in the field. Also, while you're out training, go check out the everyday wear, www.sitkagear.com. Also, thank you to Lucky Duck. Lucky Duck is your 5-star crash test rated kennel, both in the intermediate and in the large size. So no matter how big or small your hunting partner is, you can be sure that they're traveling the safest way that they possibly can. www.luckyduck.com. Also, thank you to Kent Cartridge. Kent Cartridge is the shotgun shell that we use all hunting season long, but then as we are in training season, we also love using the blanks. It's a great way to condition your dog to the gunfire, but also keep everyone around you safe with not shooting the live rounds. So go check out the Kent blanks as you go and progress through your training season. Thank you to Gun Dog Supply. Gun Dog Supply is your one-stop shop for all of your hunting and training needs as it pertains to your four-legged hunting partner. They're great people, great products, just a fantastic company, www.gundogsupply.com. And last but not least, thank you to your Retriever Roadmap. Retriever Roadmap is your go-to option for online training. If you're looking to train your dog at home yourself, be sure to go check out Retriever Roadmap. Not only great content, but also a great community that you can lean on and help kind of go through that process yourself. So www.retrieverroadmap.com. Well, I hope everybody's off to a fantastic start to the week here. We have a couple guests with me today, which again, like I said at the start of this, it's fairly abnormal for me to have guests on here, oftentimes just simply because of my schedule. Difficult to actually get a time set aside to sit down and talk, but I was able to coordinate this one, and there's a reason why these guys are on. So first, I want to introduce who is on. So I have Eric Shuddy, who is, if you guys follow Retriever Roadmap, he is a Retriever Roadmap strike team leader for the Western Wisconsin area. So he leads the trainings. He's also working at the kennel, helping us train here this summer, as he's a great school teacher. He's a great head basketball and baseball coach at Concordia Academy over in the Twin Cities, but he has some free time in the summer, so he gets to come help us out training. So Eric, thank you for spending the time with us here today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
And then we also have my good buddy B-Mac. If you guys are Hush followers, you guys know who I'm talking about. If you're not, go check out Hush, especially if you are into big game, if you're into fishing. The Hush channel on YouTube is a fantastic way to get that content. And Brian is a big part of what they do there, and he's one of the owners of the brand. So, Brian, thank you for spending the time and calling in from Utah.
Absolutely. Glad to be here.
So, basically, let me kind of recap where we were and kind of what led us to this conversation. This is a topic that has come up fairly frequently, and I've addressed it in certain ways, but we've never just kind of dug into the pros and cons and the highs and lows of hunt tests. And we all, the three of us, were just at a hunt test here this last weekend. So I felt like this was an interesting time to dig into this and kind of talk about all of our experiences, because we come from three very different and unique situations. So, of course, myself, I've hunt tested for many years. Normally, I'm running many dogs. This last weekend, I only ran one. There's a reason for that. I'm sure we'll get into that because these guys like to make fun of me about that. But I only had one dog that I was running, but I was running the finished level. That was an HRC test. Eric has a really nice little female named Scout that he was running in seasoned. And Eric, this wasn't your first hunt test, was it?
This is my first one that I've ran, correct.
Okay. Yep. But you've attended them.
I've attended them to learn about it only about a year ago, so I'm really fresh on this.
Okay. And then Brian had his dog Cruz, and he had zero intention of doing this, and his dog progressed so much this last week while he was in Wisconsin at the kennel. Came in from Utah, spent some time with us. They were like, why not? He's doing so well, let's put him into it. So we had Cruz running started, we had Scout running seasoned, and then we had my dog Tucker running finished. And so we have three different levels, we have three different insights, we have three different perspectives, from being brand new to seeing it and first time participating to having done this for a long time. And so what I really wanted to do is kind of dig into, we were all successful. We all came home with ribbons, right? I really am less interested in that. I'm more interested in just kind of the thoughts and experiences that we all had, because we get so many questions around the test, right? So like, is it for me? Is it not? What can I expect? How do I prepare? What do I do when I get there? I feel like it's a fairly intimidating thing for most people. So Eric, I kind of want to start with you, because having done your research in attending, and that's absolutely your personality, right? Like, you love to educate yourself, dig into it, feel very prepared, and then go into it. First off, tell me about what kind of led you there, and then let's kind of get into the weekend and what you thought.
Yeah, what kind of led me there is about a year ago I started looking into more of what this hunt test stuff is about. I had no idea what AKC and HRC was and the difference between the two, and it was confusing. So I settled on HRC. So I spent some time last year going.
Any reason that you landed that way? Yeah.
Well, to be honest with you, from talking to people, people were telling me from the HRC side, a little bit more friendlier, less competition. And I've not been to an AKC one, but I did hear some comments this weekend about people talking about the friendliness of the HRC piece, which I have seen now for a full year.
So, but when you say competition, you don't mean, what you mean is like, you and I are both there. I want you to be successsul. You want me to be successful, because we're running against a standard, not against each other.
Yeah, I mean, a perfect example is I did not have. I mean, I failed the last day, and it's not fun coming off that line, walking to the truck, and I come back, and the guy that came after me, young kid, never knew who he was, came up to me, encouraging words, and I mean, that was fantastic. So that piece was, you can see that in that community. So it started with that and just learning. I did have some help helping her get to the started title last year. We did some retrieves, and those are very, simplistic ones. And then I just spent time at the seasoned. I spent time at the finished. Man, I spent 2 full weekends at hunt tests just watching. Is this for me? And the problem with me is I'm extremely competitive. So I want to compete. And when I get my claws on something, I want to be the best version that I can be of that. So then throughout this year, as I watched Scout progress, been working at it, been fortunate enough to work at Riverstone, which been able to work with Scout that whole time. And I wasn't going to maybe do it. You brought it up. You want to go run a test? And then it was game on from there. And then I started picking your brain. I said, listen, I said, I'm worried about myself. I need to run through this stuff. The gun. Now I have the gun in my hand. The dog will do the things we asked it to do, but I did not want to be the person to screw up. So, for the last 2 weeks leading up to that, we set up tests. I stayed after hours. There were a couple things that were bothering me. She switched on a diversion. I tried to fix that. And, getting over on water blinds, just little things I wanted to go into this being prepared. I did not want to just show up, do it, and go home and not be successful on it. And at the end of the day, I enjoyed the process of this. And then you competed, and then you just pick up the pieces at the end of the day and write some notes down, and that's kind of where I'm at right now on this weekend, this past weekend.
So I want to dig into a couple things just for clarity. If someone's out there and is maybe new to this or maybe thinking of it, the gun part of it. So HRC is unique in the way that you handle a live firearm. The rounds you use are popper rounds, so they're not live rounds, but you shoot, it does put that primer off, so it entices the dog to be steady even through the gunfire. It's in an attempt to simulate a hunt as real as possible, right? And you can fail if you yourself, the handler, do a gun violation. Okay, so a gun violation, there's a number of them. So what they always say is, if you put the gun down, so you shoot, you send the dog, you put the gun down. If the action is open, but the safety is off, that's a warning. If the action is closed, but the safety is on, okay, it's a warning. And if the safety is off and the action is closed, you're disqualified. Okay, two warnings will put you out. And but that's what they always talk about. But there's additional. Okay, so I actually got my first gun warning ever. It would have been on Saturday, right? And I'd never had one before, and I was running a different level, but it's the same thing when the gun, part of it. And what happened was with the diversion, I had fumbled my popper, putting it into the gun, and I was shutting the action. The popper wanted to pop out, so then I was opening the action, putting the shell in. The bird had already launched, so I shucked it, closed, and I shot, and I knew I didn't have the gun to my shoulder. I knew it, right? So I heard the judge go like, you're right when I did it, and so I knew it, right? So I, boom, open and safe, and I turned, I showed the gun, I said, open and safe, right? And I was very clear because I was like, I don't want a double ding here and disqualify Tucker, because he literally, it was the last part of his test, and then he went and passed the day. So I could have, if I screwed that up. He did phenomenal on his water work. He goes and runs. I think that land series was as perfect of a series that he possibly could have run. And I could have screwed it up and disqualified him in literally the last 10 steps that he had. And and I'd never had a gun warning, and I knew it happened, right? And I owned it and, apologized afterwards. Like, hey guys, appreciate you pointing that out and move on. So it's not the end of the world, but it is something that if you overthink it, the dog's going to read off of you being tense and nervous, and your dog is going to respond differently than a normal training session.
Yeah, for sure. And that's what the gun piece is just even on a double marks shooting when you shucked it out, and just learning so the dog is hearing the same things. So I did not want to be the person in the end to screw this thing up. So to be honest with you, I even did visualizations of the course before I got up there of what I was going to do. So that was an important piece to me. So that was kind of what the 2 weeks leading up to it is just preparing myself for it. And of course, Scout, she was prepared, and and we ran into a couple roadblocks, and at the end of the day, it was a good weekend, and we did come home with one pass. I felt she ran tremendous. She just crushed a couple of them, and a couple of them we struggled on a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Well, so so we're talking Eric in seasoned. Mm-hmm. So what a season test is you have a double mark on land. So you have a water series and a land series. Okay, so in your situation, I'm just going to use your Saturday. Mm-hmm. You had water in the morning, so you can run. It could be either or, so you just don't know where you're going. So you have a water series, land series. You ran water in the morning, which consists of a double water mark, a water blind, right? Then on land, you have a double land mark and a land blind. And then you also have a diversion in there, and you have a walk-up in there, right? And so the walk-up is your dog is walking with you at heel. You're walking, a bird will pop out, you shoot, the dog has to stay steady and under control. So that is something that you worked a lot on. I would say most people struggle with that if they're unprepared, because it's not a normal thing to train for. Normally you're sitting at your side, right? So to be walking, have something pop out in front of you and shoot, that's where you see the wheels come off for a lot of dogs. And then a diversion, for anyone unaware, is when they're coming back with a retrieve and another bird shoots out, you shoot it, and the dog can't drop that bird, switch to the other one. They have to finish the task at hand and then go pick that last one up. So that's a seasoned level test. Just so everyone's kind of aware of what we're talking about here.
Mm-hmm. Correct. And that first water series was actually, you didn't really know how they were going to set it up. So actually my first water series was a double to a walk-up to a blind. And the next day with the water series, it was just a double and a blind. But on the one double, they actually shot it up on the bank out of the water, which will come to a conversation we'll have here in the day. All of our things we practices were way more difficult than what we did, and we practiced that bank shot. I expected both of them to be in the water. Today's judges was up on the bank. So each day was different on how they set it up. And the other thing you take in consideration really is the wind on everything you're doing on this stuff, especially on the blinds. Where's that wind coming from? What side do you want to get them on? So a lot of learning, a lot of fun, and I just come back with a ton of positives and of course some negatives out of it too. But it was a great weekend.
Yeah. Okay. So that's our season level.
Yep.
Now let's go to our started level with Brian. So Brian, give us kind of a breakdown of, obviously you did not expect to do this at all. But your boy progressed so quickly. It's like, well, why not? Put him in a new environment, a new situation. So kind of walk through that with us.
Yeah. So, I mean, throughout the course of the week, I was lucky enough to spend some time with Josh and with Dave, and Eric was out there as well most days, out at Riverstone, and kind of had a chance to take my dog. So Cruz is 13 months, and he was, we picked him up last year at the end of June. And so I've tried to follow the retriever roadmap process and do the best that I know how to do as a complete novice in this category. So my objective was to try to get him through bird and gun intro. Josh has all the tools and the resources and the know-how, and that was something I was really looking forward to. And then through the process, Dave kind of helped me tighten up some obedience, and over the course of 5 or so days of training, we kind of realized that he was handling all of this stuff really well, which includes, frankly, like the being subject to a lot of new situations, other dogs, other people, other smells, other sounds. My wife and I live a pretty boring and quiet lifestyle, so we got to expose him to a lot of new things, which I think was just great for his development, on a social level. And during the process, eventually Josh and then Dave were like, dude, you should just run Cruz and, the started level, which I have absolutely no knowledge whatsoever of hunt tests, of the governing bodies. Didn't know a thing about it, never been to one, never researched any of it. So the complete opposite of like what Eric was preparing for. And I had no idea what to expect. I didn't know the rules. I didn't know all the little intricacies that you pick up from what you got to wear to the rules of engagement on each level of what you can and can't do with the dog to, what the environment would be like, what kind of people would be there, what's the circumstances for the land portion of it, what is it like for the water portion of it. And so I kind of probably walked in with wide eyes of like, all right, what am I getting myself into here? Meanwhile, Josh has done probably hundreds of these things. So again, we are definitely three completely different levels. All I knew really going into it is that I could handle Cruz, so I could hold him when he was at my heel. They would do 2 marks, one at a time. So on the land portion of it, you'd have a dead duck being launched, send the dog, and then he needed to bring it back to me. Essentially, if he didn't bring it back in hand, I could take more or less one step to retrieve said bird. And so throughout the week, kind of leading up to it, we had pushed Cruz way beyond what I would have expected to. He was running, with all the other more seasoned and advanced dogs and doing some things that I thought was just really fantastic. And so it was great because what we experienced at the hunt test was so much simpler than what we had practiced all week. And so we were fortunate. Cruz did great. He went 4 for 4, didn't really show any issues. I think the biggest challenge for a really young dog at those events, it's also a great learning opportunity, is just the distractions you couldn't anticipate. Examples is you've got a bunch of judges sitting around in a tent you got to walk up to. You've got people manning the blinds that are loading up the slingshot, shooting the birds out there. You've got somebody running the gun for you. So unlike seasoned and finished, as a handler, I don't need to worry about the gun portion of that. There's somebody dedicated to doing that. So all I have to do is focus on, my interaction with the dog. But nonetheless, like for a young male that hasn't been around that environment, the obstacles we faced that were challenging to a degree, we still overcame them. But smells of different female dogs that were in and around the area right before we had gone, that was a distraction that took a little bit more time to get the bird back on our very first land set. Later in the afternoon, we did the water set. There were some people, we were the last group to go, so people kind of wrapping up. And there's people moving back and forth from where the bird was getting launched behind the blind. That provided a distraction. So he needed to retrieve, but he definitely kind of like focused his attention on the people walking back behind the blind versus me. So instead of, coming directly back to me, he took a bit more of a roundabout way. Again, he completed the task, but just a few variables I didn't necessarily anticipate. The marks themselves, though, I found to be quite simplistic for the starter level. I thought, we could have challenged him. We did challenge him well beyond that throughout the week. All in all, it was a cool experience. Personally, for me, I don't think it would be something I would do again. The biggest negative for me, it was because we were all kind of watching each other too, but it was a long day. I mean, it was a 12-hour day, and there was a lot of sitting around. And I'm not wired to do that. I got to keep moving, do things. And so there was I would say 4.5 minutes of actually running 2 different land and water sets, and then like 8.5 to 9 hours of waiting. And so that for me is just, man, that was a killer. I would much rather, do a strike force training event or get to spend time with Josh or do a more on-purpose training when we can get more reps. And, then it's just you're watching your dog or your friend's dog versus just a lot of other folks' dogs. So I can understand and see why people would enjoy those events, certainly. But I think moving forward for me, I don't expect to go back to one, I don't think.
Yeah, and I think that's a really interesting. I want to dig into that a little bit too, because that is a big part of this. Before we do that, I'll jump kind of into we've heard about season, we've heard about started. I'll kind of tell you the finished level of this. So I was running my youngest dog named Tucker, and it was, I hesitate to say this because I don't want to be dishonest, but I don't believe I am. I think it was the only time that I can remember, yeah, unless I go all the way back to Easton, which was my first dog, might be the only time I'd ever been at a test I was just running one dog. Like I just can't remember. I mean, I went a number of years where I was running, client dogs, and we had, I think the most that we ran was like 21 dogs in a weekend. Which was just like it's chaos. It's go nonstop. And so for having one dog there, it definitely put me a little more in what I think the majority of people would be in. Like obviously, a pro that has a bunch of dogs and making their livelihood or their living off of doing it. Okay, that's a little different. But majority of you listening are going to be in that one, maybe two dog scenario. And so I think a lot of what Eric is talking about, or Brian is talking about here, makes a lot of sense. And it was unique for me to be put in that situation because I had not seen that before. So we will dig into that. But so I was running Tucker. Reason I was running just Tucker is I was supposed to have a procedure where the joke is that I was going to get converted from a bull to a steer. Or I've also heard stallion to gelding. I've heard a lot of different jokes as people found that out. I mean I'm open about it because I don't think it's that big a deal. It's just like it is what it is. But my biggest concern was it was supposed to be on Thursday afternoon. And so I really didn't know how many times I wanted to waddle back and forth, to and from the line. And I also had no idea what kind of discomfort I was going to be in. So I actually called ahead of time to ask that question. They're like, I really don't think you're going to be wanting to do anything that weekend. So that's why I was like, I'm not one that's just going to sit out, right? So I'll run Tucker. And I ended up rescheduling the procedure because later on when I called just to kind of get a little more information, I was told it could be a 2-day recovery, it could be a 2-week recovery, and the 2-week thing was just not an acceptable answer to me because it would have killed my rodeo season. It would have killed, it would have done a lot. It would have been very difficult to be out of any kind of game, for 2 weeks. So I rescheduled it towards the end of August so that I can get through game fair, and then if I need a week to recover, then I have it, but I just have it right now. So I rescheduled it, so I didn't have that inconvenience. But finished test, very similar to a season test we talked about before. You have a land and a water series. Now you're doing triple marks. Okay, so you have a triple mark on land, triple mark on water. You will have a blind on water. You'll have a blind on land. So every test consists of 3 marks and a blind. And then we are going to have a diversion in there. And then you're going to have an honor. So you have to honor another dog. Now, something I didn't mention in seasoned, but it's the same in seasoned as finished, is that the variables, okay, so in seasoned it'd be the walk-up and the diversion, and finished would be the diversion and the honor. Those can happen at any point, right? So it could be one of those on land, one of those on water. It could be both in one. Oftentimes, if you see both being done, both will be done on land, because the land series goes faster. Water series, there's just, as dogs swim, it just takes a lot more time. And that's a piece of this too, is the timeliness. Like Brian said, I mean, we were there, Brian, I think it was 12 hours from the time we left to the time we got back, right? And it was a half-hour drive. So it wasn't, isn't that right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's a long day. Yeah, a really long day. And but they have a lot of dogs they're trying to get through. So there's obviously a process with that. On that finished series, so you have 6 marks, right? Triple mark on land, triple mark on water. You can only handle on one of the 6 marks. So if the reason for that is that they want to show your dog actually marking, like actually doing the work, that you're not handling them to every mark, right? So actually do the work, actually mark, show that you have the proficiency in doing that, but you can handle and help them on one of the 6. So I was very, very proud of Tucker. He's my youngest dog, which is why I chose to run him. He's the only dog that I don't have titled right now that is a part of my breeding program. That was the other reason I wanted to really focus on him. And we'll kind of dig into that here in a second too, is the value that I put on that for our breeding program. But I need to get him titled. Like he's already made the team. And one of the things I think is really neat is Brian had asked me this, or maybe it was Eric. One of you guys asked me this before the test. But he said, what are you gonna? It was something to the fact of like, what if Tucker fails, right? And my response was, I don't care. Like, I know what I have in Tucker. I know I have a very special dog in Tucker, and a failure or a fail at a test that doesn't disvalidate to me what I know. But part of that is because I've been doing this for a very long time, right? There was a time that I walked into those tests and I was so tensed up because if my dog didn't pass, it basically told me I didn't know what I had, right? Well, that's not the case, right? The best dogs have failures. The best dogs have hiccups. The best dogs don't pass all the time. It's just the way it is. And I think that perspective helps me walk into those things a little looser, maybe a little more relaxed for sure. And I think it just helps my dogs ease into that. So Tucker had never, ever run a hunt test before Saturday. And I like to push my dogs right into finished. One, because I want the training to be fully done before I put them in that environment, because there is a lot of bad habits that can come up while you're at tests. So I want the training to be completely done, and I want to know that I'm putting them in a situation to succeed. The other part of this is that I am just at a point in my life where I really, really dislike wasting my time. I have 2 young kids that I adore, and I don't want to be the dad that's never there. I already have to do, I say have to, I get to do this for a living. But what that also means is that Monday through Friday, from sun up until the kids get done with school, this is what I'm doing. So if I have to do this all over again on the weekends, sometimes that wears on me as far as like, I already miss every morning getting the kids up and getting them to school. Right? I already missed that time with them. So do I really want to kill my weekends going to this stuff too? So I try to really make sure, hey, my dogs are prepared. I feel like this is going to be productive. This can be worthwhile, and then go into that. So at this point, I'm just testing my own personal dogs for our breeding purpose reasons. It just kind of where I'm at right now. So, but especially Brian's perspective here, Eric, I'd like to get your thoughts. Like what is, as you look at kind of the pros and cons, right? So like, I think Brian kind of dug into a little bit, that he understands, like, especially the variables, right? Like the chaos that they go into, the desensitizing crews to those situations, bunch of people, bunch of dogs, gets feathers in his mouth, right? There's a lot going on. But also that other side of it, what was your thoughts and perspective as you went through that day or the weekend?
Yeah, the pros of it for me, and remember I'm only 1 year in, for me, it helps me to show me where I'm at. It'll expose my weaknesses. You get one shot at it. So for me, it was showing where I'm at with my training. Am I doing the right things? I compared myself to other dogs. I came away seeing some dogs up at the line that were not ready for that test, and some that were very ready. So the pros of that has got me thinking, are people trying to just quickly title their dogs? I mean, what does a title mean? I mean, are you trying to quickly title them? Does that mean it's a good dog? Or are you trying to run? I'm trying to run a perfect round, to be honest with you. So I learned that at the end of the day, which really helped me process my next step with what I'm going to do with Scout. My opinion, she ran, well, the first series I ran was the water one, which I have on video. And I thought she was one of the top dogs there that ran that water series, that first water series that day. I was nervous as heck to do it.
She looked great, though.
Thank you.
Yeah, she really did.
And I was talking to my wife a little bit about this morning. What people don't see is I did not like her delivery to me with the bird. Nobody saw that. She was mouthy, feathers. That bothered me. So to me, that was not a perfect round. So what am I doing? I'm going to get her back up on the table here in the next month, and I'm going to fix that because I had a little bit of that issue last year at the end of the season. So to me, that wasn't a perfect round, but I was happy with what happened. And then the field day, or the later that day we ran the field, it was not pretty. We got through it. You saw the tail end of it. I was proud in our training because everything she pushed me on, I felt like I knew why it was happening, and I really tried to help her get through it. We sat at the truck at the end of the day, and you said, what do you think? I said, I think that was a B average below, but I think it's good enough to pass, which it was. But I was not happy with that run. At the end of the day, I got a pass out of it. But I didn't think it was a perfect day. I'm looking for perfect runs. I don't know if that's possible, but at the season level, you certainly have a little more leeway. At the finish level, you don't have as much leeway. There's certain things, and I've seen people pull their dogs off right away after the first couple of retreats because they just don't have it. So the process on that and learning new things, I just walked away with trying to help me get an understanding of, is this something I want to keep doing? And at the end of the day, I think I'm done running this year because this leads into the con, is the time commitment. I'm running one dog. And those who know me, I'm really busy. And I'll just give you a time frame on the last day. We ran the water series at 9 o'clock. I did not run again until 3:30 in the afternoon. What I did learn is she crushed the morning sessions. She had harder problems in the afternoon sessions, sitting around in the kennel, getting in and out. She hears everything going on. And I think that played a little bit of part in that. So the time commitment is a lot. And, you have people there running multiple dogs, which is good for them because they're keeping busy. But at the end of the day also, I had a boy playing a boys basketball game. You were there talking, and I said, yeah, he just missed the last second three. We're running. I missed that part. And so I think time, you have to be able to, be able to dedicate that. And that's why I think I've seen in the HRC, I've seen it be a family event too. You see a lot of young kids and families there, which I think is a good thing. And that's what these hunt clubs do a great job of doing. And then the bottom line is, do I need to validate myself? Is it a status thing? Hey, I got a ribbon. I know what I'm doing. I don't know. I mean, I think about your case. I don't think you need to validate your dogs, Josh. I mean, I see them every day. Unfortunately, some people think they need a ribbon on that to validate that. I mean, I see them do these things all the time. Because they failed that day, that's a bad dog. I mean, that's validation to me. Just come out and watch your dogs run. I saw Strike and Irk, I think it was Strike, run a 350 blind retrieve. Game over. That's all the validation I need, or anybody should need in the end of the day. So what does that ribbon mean? What are my standards in it? Am I okay with an okay run to get a pass? I'm not to that point. I want a perfect run. And I've learned, I could kind of tell what everybody's standards were kind of there a little bit. So that's kind of the pros and cons of that whole thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm interested too, Brian, from, Eric and I are obviously going to look from, I'd say, a heavy training perspective, because that's what the mode we're in right now, in the summer training. But what about from a hunting perspective? Like these events, they are meant, or at least they were intentionally meant, or intentionally, is that the right word I'm looking for? Originally might be the right way. They were originally meant to replicate the hunting scenario and be able to prove who the best hunting dogs would be, right? Like, Brian, from your perspective, being a hunter, what did you see? And I know I'm kind of blindsiding you because we didn't talk about that. But, with you talking about that, Eric, of like seeing, like my dog's actually hunting, like I'm kind of interested, Brian, like you're a hunter. That's what you do. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, it's not that similar in my opinion. For a lot of reasons that are those variables that you don't anticipate or know about, right? The 15 or 20 trucks parked with, kennels erupting with barks throughout the course of the whole day. I mean, the amount of like random people, kind of like, there was an audience at a lot of these events. It would be maybe in lawn chairs or just standing around kind of watching. You had Josh, your first run with Tucker, there was people literally talking loud when you're trying to handle him on a mark, to the point, like, if I'm not mistaken, the judges, took that into consideration on how he handled that first one, because it was a legit distraction to just so all the different people and situations, versus if you're going hunting, generally speaking, the way I go is with a friend or maybe a couple friends and a dog or two that you have familiarity with, and there's just a lot less noise, if you will, in a true hunting situation. So I think, Eric made a good point. Having a dog sitting in a kennel all day long, it was hot. It was, again, other barking dogs and just a lot of stuff going on. That level of weight and anxiety that builds within the dogs, I don't think you would find in a true hunting situation either. So, again, there's some things that pull out of it that are valuable, but at the same time, I don't think it's very similar to what I would see out on a waterfowl hunt or an upland hunt. Quite different, frankly. And getting to the point of like the title, what does the title mean? For you, Josh, it has become a requirement for a breeder to get their dogs titled. People have this perception that, oh, well, if it's a titled dog, it must have these incredible bloodlines. But I think if you really break that down, even what does a titled dog look like? Because from what I know, and I don't know much as you know, a title at the end, a certificate, something you can market, doesn't necessarily mean the dog is better than one that isn't titled. There's different ways to get your title, and some people might need to take many, 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 many attempts to obtain that. Comparatively, you may have a dog that runs through it and passes the first 4 times. They go 4 for 4, they're dialed, they're done, they're checked the box. Those are different dogs, but they have the same piece of paper. So a dog that can run through it in no time at all versus a dog that might take 10 or 15, and I don't know what the limitations on our attempts, but my point being, you have a dog that and a handle that attempt it a numerous amount of times and they achieve it. But is that dog the same caliber or quality of a dog than a handler and a dog that runs it and goes 100% or 90% and they're done in 4 or 5 attempts? And I think it's fair to say that they're different, and like Eric mentioned, and I saw this firsthand, like you are running these simulation tests Monday through Friday, and you're running it with your younger dogs that are up and coming, your what we would call like finished dogs, the ones everybody knows about, loves and cherishes, the Brocks, the Strikes, the Solos, the Clydes. Like these dogs have been titled for a long time in many cases, whereas Tucker's trying to achieve that paper, but you're achieving that paper to appease a group of people that are essentially evaluating the quality of your kennel and your dogs. And again, just from my own perspective, not being in this field and not having a lot of gun dog history, your dogs are as talented of a group as you'll find with or without that piece of paper. And it's because you're doing it every day and you're making it more challenging than oftentimes you're going to see at a hunt test. But more importantly, you're a waterfowl hunter through and through. You are a trainer and you're exceptionally good at it. And you've built this amazing brand with your wife, but you love to duck hunt. And Eric and I have been fortunate enough to sit in a duck blind with you and with your dogs. In my case, I got to hunt with Strike, I got to hunt with Brock, and I got to hunt with Solo. And the number one thing that I saw throughout that time in Arkansas was just the consistency between all of them. And what stood out to me this whole entire week, going to the hunt test, watching your dogs hunt in Arkansas, is how important obedience is to all levels of those hunt tests, and frankly, all levels of success out in the field. That is the number one thing. And man, obedience is just the most mundane, methodical training component throughout the process, but just so important. And I think it's an easy step that we all try to skip through, or maybe we just kind of give it a 70%, or maybe we correct ourselves to the dog, right? Meaning, so when we're doing on leash obedience and trying to get them to heel, they're doing it pretty good, but part of the reason is because we're speeding up to get to the heel pace that they are setting. All these little tiny variables, in my opinion, really make the dog what it is and their potential. And I think it's just those, if you look at anything you do, whether it's in sports or business, details matter. That foundational obedience is just so valuable to what the end result of you and your dog's journey will be. And that really just stood out at this hunt test. getting to watch so many different people and seeing where the handler and the dog broke down, and maybe they didn't pass. A lot of times it's derived from obedience or lack thereof. And the cool thing too is when we're running these simulations out at Riverstone, and a dog doesn't perform the way it should. Maybe it's having an off day. Maybe it didn't have enough food, whatever it might be. They're running lethargic. You're able to shut them down in that event and let them think about it, take some time, and maybe bring them back in a couple hours and rerun it. I think the challenge of like a hunt test is you kind of feel obligated because you paid this money to push through maybe a situation where they're not responding to your handling. And what does that create further down the road for maybe challenges or obstacles you've got to go correct? And I think it's hard to maybe shut down a dog on a run at any level because, again, you've paid the money and you're challenging yourself to try to achieve this goal. But does it cause more challenges by doing that versus if you're in these simulation type situations at a strike force event or you're doing some side training off on your own? When something doesn't go great, you can immediately stop it, correct it, and not create further bad habits.
Yeah, I think that's a great point too, because there is that uncontrolled factor of you can't make corrections. You can't even tell the dog that they're doing something wrong unless you're going to shut it down, which I would say 99% of people are not going to do that because, to your point, Brian, they paid, right? So a lot of people, I think I want to say finish was like $85, so you're talking $170 for a weekend. Like most people are not shutting that down. And so what I love about this topic and this part of the conversation is that if I were to be really honest with you guys, this is something that I've really struggled with internally now, especially for the last couple of years. Ever since my kids came into my life, my priorities and perspective has certainly changed. And in the past, really a lot of this is because I've had such a great wife that has been understanding of being gone weekend after weekend at these events. But now I don't want to be gone. I don't want to be, like Eric, like that's a big deal. You missed that moment that your son had, right, in that game, right? And like, you don't want to miss that. I don't want to miss that. But we're also here trying to achieve, something with the dogs. And it's been a really tough internal struggle because I look at that test, right? And quite frankly, I think, both of you guys would probably echo this. Like there were a lot of dogs running at that high level and finished that would you want to hunt with them?
That brings up a good point because we did see a couple, and you said it to me, you watched one run going, does that dog look happy running that? I said, no. Looks like it's just going through the motions just to get done with the test. And at the end of the day, might have a title, I don't know. But what kind of dog do you want to hunt with? I mean, I want one that's excited to be there.
Right. I mean, I watched dogs that were being vocal, right? Like every mark that went up, and then they moved to the next one. Like, do you want to hunt with that dog? Right. There was a pro there. I'm not going to use his name, but I actually really enjoyed this guy. So years and years ago, I was running a little girl named Sage who, maybe someone out there has a Sage puppy, because she had a couple litters of puppies with us. She was a great little dog, but I actually had a client dog, and this pro came up to me and was like, hey, the dog I'm running right before you, I mean, is a breaking son of a gun, just so you know. So I said, okay, thanks for letting me know. Huge props for him for doing that, because what it allowed me to do is go back, switch my client dog with one of my personal dogs in Sage. That way, if somebody gets screwed up, at least it's not a client dog. So I bring Sage out. Guy runs the test, goes the honor bucket. Sage and I sit down, and sure enough, and he's yelling the whole time, sit, 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 boom, dog takes off, right? And the guy, again, super nice. He's like, gosh, dang, I'm sorry, Josh, and like shucks his gun open. He's upset about it, right? And I look over, and little Sage is sitting next to me and like has this very slow motion look up at me like, Dad, I didn't do anything wrong. Just had that look on her face. And, so afterwards, Guy came up to me, he's like, man, I'm sorry. I've been trying to get him through this last pass, and he's fought me every single test. Yeah, this is his second year trying to get through this thing. His owner just wants that title. Okay, like in that situation right there, on paper, if that dog, and I'm sure it did eventually get a title, right? But that dog has an issue, right? And then fought a professional handler on getting that pass. You know, those 3 passes, 4 passes, whatever that dog needed. I mean, you don't see that on paper, right? And I don't want to hunt with that dog. I don't want to hunt with that dog that's breaking, especially in a situation that it didn't look like it broke all the time, you know, on when it was working, but you put it into a competitive environment. So there's a dog that in my head can't hunt with another dog because they're going to be competitive, want to break. That same pro this last weekend came up to me and we were talking, and he's like, gosh, I'm trying to get this dog just through this last one. Cause you know, again, it was almost the same thing. Like, owner just wants this last ribbon. And, you know, this dog was one that was like, it was doing the vocal. It was like kind of jumping forward, jumping back, like just not in control. But again, if that dog passed, I don't know if it did, but if that dog passed, again, on paper, looks like it. So where I'm struggling with this is that I believe, and Brian, I really appreciate you saying this, and Eric as well, that I really believe on a daily basis, we set up situations that are more difficult than what you'd see at these tests.
100%. Absolutely. I've seen it this whole summer.
Okay. Then on top of that, we're in a training environment, Brian, to your point, that we can work through something. If something doesn't work, okay, let's show it to them, let's correct it, let's get them through it, and let's get better. Like, let's get proficient, right? And the reason I struggle with this is because I love that. If I were to be very blunt and honest, I don't love going to tests anymore. I just look at it, I'm like, here we go, another weekend, right? And I get like that more so, I think, than anything because of my family, you know, situation, that I would rather, you know, like for me, you know, not as big of a situation as Eric had, but, you know, I miss my kids going to our town festival parade, right? I miss them, you know, being at the lake and they had friends over, like I missed all that, you know? And so I'm just at a point where I don't want to miss that. And so I struggle with that. But, you know, Brian had asked me something while we were driving back the one day. He's like, why do you feel the need to do this? Right? And Eric's shaking his head right now because I'm sure he's thinking the same thing. And I'll tell you the pull back and forth for me is that I truly believe, like if I didn't truly believe my dogs are special, they wouldn't be in this breeding program, right? And I would say that I have an extremely high standard for that. When you look at the other dogs that are running, when you look at, I feel like I have a very, very, very high standard, you know, for what I'm looking for. I know that. Yeah, I think, Eric, you've seen, I think you know. Brian, I think you know it from the time of, you know, you being around us in the kennel, right? But I also struggle with the other side of it, because when I hear a pro or a breeder talk about this topic, and if they're like, I don't spend my time running tests, like this dog could do it if I did it, but I just don't do it, I immediately think, yeah, it's probably because you can't. Right? And I don't know if that's a me thing. I don't know if that's an ego thing. I don't know what that is, right? But that is where my mind goes to first. And I don't want to be, I've grown up in this, right? Like I've field trialed, I've hunt tested, I'm competitive, I'm in that, like I have the background, I have the history, I've done all that. I don't want to be one of these social media trainers that talk about their dogs and you know, show them off on social media, which I'm going to be very honest with you guys. I watch a lot of the stuff on social media and I go, that dog's run that 19 times already. Like, you showed the perfect time after he's run a bunch of times. Like, why is that dog panting? Why did that dog just run that, you know, 300-yard blind completely straight, completely, like, probably because you showed it to him 4 times before the video to make the video clean, right? Like, I don't want to be that guy. I don't want that perception. But on the other side of it, I do feel that with my high standard and with what we're doing every single day in training, that like our dogs are this level and then some, right? I just have this need inside of me. I feel like it's an obligation that I have to have this title to prove to people that are getting on this puppy list that they can do it. Even though I can show it to them, even though I just have this. And so that's what I struggle with.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I really, really appreciate the pros that come to these things because that's their lifestyle. They're making their money, and they need to do these things for their clients. So I understand that 100%. I'm not a breeder. I'm not in that. I'm in a way different category. I was talking to somebody the other day. I said, in the end of the day, I'm a duck hunter. I'm not a hunt test guy. I'm a duck hunter. I think I needed to do it to prove to myself that I can run these things and do it. That's a validation for me. And I strongly encourage through the Retriever Roadmap community, we've had some people ask me some questions about it because I didn't get specifics on where she failed, but where did she fail? What happened? I just gave them one word is obedience. I need to work on that, even at the seasoned level. But I encourage people to go do it, especially those who are on the fence on it. Go do this stuff. Do the started one and get your feet wet. And if that's something you feel like you need to do, go ahead and do it. At the end of the day, I'm a duck hunter. I want to be able to help people in the field. Like when my friends and relatives come with, I want to have a nice dog for them to have an awesome experience. And my friends who have other dogs, I want to help them in the field get their dog better. That's where I'm at with it. But from your perspective, and you don't need any validation, but that's kind of the situation you're in. And I totally respect your opinion on that, and it's 100% valid.
Yeah, it's. I just feel like it's something I continue to struggle with. Now, at the end of the day, like I'm a hunter, right? And I want to be producing dogs that are great hunting dogs. And I don't believe that you can get that from that piece of paper. And I'll tell you one, there's a good friend of mine, great friend of mine, that he's big into the tests. And we've had this conversation before of like, man, like I don't dig the test. I don't want to spend a whole weekend there. I don't want the travel. I don't want it's not something that I get crazy about going to. And he lives for it, right? And I respect that. And I think it's great that he has that passion and he dives into that side of it. But like he's breeding, or he has a client, I should say, that is breeding a dog that, has her finished title and ran at the Grand and is doing all this stuff, right? And I just asked him, I was like, so how old is this dog? And he was 4. And I said, so what is your goal as far as who are you going to sell these puppies to? And he's like, well, gun dog owners. And I was like, but man, like, how many times has this dog hunted? And I knew the answer to it, which is 0, because she's playing the game. And we don't want to screw her up for the game by taking her hunting, right? That's the level that a lot of these dogs live at, right? Is if you're playing the game, you're playing the game. And let's not kid ourselves. It is a game. It is a game. It's not hunting, right? It is a game. So you are preparing your test, or you're preparing and training for very specific things that you're going to encounter in the game. And that's what you're training for, not a hunting situation. So for me, like, man, I know a lot of dogs that are down in Arkansas that I hunt with when I'm down there that I would take over a lot of the finished dogs I watched run last weekend because they're hunters. Now with that same thing being said, those dogs are hunting in the same type of environment over and over. It is way easier for a dog to get really good at this when they hunt in the same situation. So like your hunt test dog, that the training is there, like that dog may excel more across the board in all situations, right? But like those dogs that I'm talking about in Arkansas, like they're not vocal, they're not making noise, they're not breaking, they're not loud. I get they're not at a test, right? But this is, I feel like there's a dichotomy here that is kind of pulling me in multiple ways. And this is a big struggle for me. It really is.
That sounds like it. I think you're on the right path, though, to figuring that out. And, it's, I mean, I don't know if I can be an outstanding duck hunter and a hunt test guy at the same time, too, because the duck hunting season unravels a lot of things. And at the end of the day, I enjoy sitting in the blind, and that's where I want to be, and and I just enjoy watching my dog work, but no, I got to be honest with you, it was a really good sense of accomplishment on my end this year, or this past weekend, to at least get one pass. I just felt like that was my goal of the weekend, and yeah, I may finish it out and get her season title in the end, but I'm not worried about it right now. If it happens, it happens.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I guess if people are just paper shopping, I guess at the end of the day that I'm just not your breeder, because, and actually, if you've noticed, maybe some of you have, maybe you haven't, I don't put our dogs, so like Brock and Bud and all these guys, like the dogs are breeding for me, I don't put their titles on the website. So if you go on their pedigree, if you look at their pedigree, and that's the exact reason why. I'm just not interested in people that are just pedigree shopping, because I feel like if all you're looking at is that piece of paper, that you're not thinking about all the boxes that I'm trying to check. If you're looking at just that piece of paper, like just what we talked about here, right? So like if Tucker ran, like that dog on Saturday that we talked about that was being vocal, right? If that dog passed and Tucker passed, which my opinion, you guys can agree or disagree, I think Tucker was the best dog there on Saturday from what I saw. But on paper, they don't say that. On paper, it's the same, right? They got the pass. So I just don't believe it's a true level of, I think there's a level of completion, but I don't think it tells the story of who the dog is. And I don't think it tells you everything that you should want to know as a puppy purchaser, as you are doing your research and you're looking for, I'm a duck hunter, I want the best duck dog I can have possible. I just don't think that piece of paper tells you the whole story. Now, on the flip side of it, like, I also don't think you can go to a breeder that's like, oh yeah, I've got great duck dogs. Like, what does that mean? Right? Or great pheasant dogs. If you're an upland hunter, I have great hunting dogs. Well, great hunting dogs, what does that mean? Right? So, man, it's a really tough one for me.
Yeah. The reason I got to know you is a friend of mine who got to know you and came to the kennel one day, and you do a great job of showing your boys off, and I don't think he cared about ribbons or anything. He saw Bud run, and that's the one I want. That's all it took, just watching. And, so I think that's a big part of it. So that paper, I'm starting to think about more about that piece of paper. What does Master Champion mean on all these pedigrees? I thought it was, okay, well, it just means you did a very good job training that dog can get to there, but is that going to be the dog that's going to suit your needs in the end? And your breeding program does a good job of having so many different studs and combinations that you want a service dog, you can go ahead and give them. You want a high-driven dog, we'll give you that. And you have a wide variety of that. It's been cool to see where all your dogs have gone off across the world. So,
Brian, what do you think on this?
It's a tough one, right? As a breeder, you are in a tough spot because the standard forever has been pedigree chasing for a lot of people that are interested in that, right? That presume a titled dog would equal a great hunting dog. And, we've all seen the examples. You've given a couple of them where that may not be the case because it is a game and it's a totally different situation than out, in a blind hunting. Like, they're just different. But at the same time, as you're running a business, you may have clients that question, well, how come your dogs are no longer showing that they're titled? And I think the only way you can navigate around that is exactly what you guys are doing. Throughout the week that I was there, Whitney had several puppy pickups, and I'm confident that 100% of them went out and met the sire while we were training. And they had a chance to watch those dogs work. They had a chance to watch multiple dogs work at different levels. The proof is right there in the pudding. And I would argue that if any of those people had questioned whether or not a dog was titled or whatever, you could have watched Tucker run alongside Brock or Strike. You wouldn't know the difference. But if they're performing at such a high level, that piece of paper wouldn't have been relevant. The person watching would have just said, holy cow, like, super impressive. Wow. And that dog's young, but look at him running with the big dogs. And so I think for you guys, as you continue to evolve your business and your brand and your pedigree, you just share more of it. You're more transparent. You're having conversations like we're having today. You're sharing hunting videos. You're sharing training videos. And the people that are out visiting you guys and, kicking the tires of maybe, do I want a Riverstone puppy, or which sire would maybe be the best fit for my dynamic? You can see some of it in person. And I would take that 10 out of 10 times over trying to look for an online certificate to tell me what I need to know about a dog. And I think you can see, the beautiful thing about the Riverstone brand and the breed is that incredible drive and focus and athleticism in the field. But the fact that these dogs are calm and they're quiet and they're still and they're just the sweetest temperament as well. You get them both. And I know everybody has different expectations of what they want in their hunting dog, but personally for my wife and I, we wanted a great companion first and foremost, somebody that can be in our house, in our car, around children, be chill. But then, man, when we go out in the field, I want a dog that can kick it up a notch and get after it. And we've been so fortunate with Cruz, who was a Strike Sunny puppy. We get the best of both worlds. And that has been, I can see that over and over and over with different combinations that, you and Whitney have come up with that are producing different puppies for different people's, expectations. But if it was me, boy, I'd have a hard time continuing down the path of doing the titled route, just because you have a lot of accolades. And if you guys wanted to create a shrine at the Riverstone headquarters, you could put a lot of ribbons and a lot of awards up there to showcase that. But to me, watching these dogs work in person, unscripted, unannounced, just, hey, we're in here picking up a dog, or we're looking, can I see one of them run? And you pull them out of the trailer and you run them through it. And then you put that dog away and you pull out a different dog and you run them through a different situation, that are all just performing at such a high level that, to me, that outperforms any piece of paper that you could ever earn.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. I agree on a lot of things you just said. I agree on that last part, and I also agree that there are this, it is the way that it's always been, right? So I think that there's some validation there that a lot of people just feel more comfortable going, oh, okay, so they have achieved that, But we have a guy named Kyle that actually just picked up a puppy from us, and he has an older dog that he comes out and he trains with us once in a while. Eric knows, Kyle well from coming out to the kennel, and he made a comment. This was probably a couple of weeks ago. Eric, I think you were there when he made this comment. He watched. We were running everybody, and we ran Tucker, and now Tucker's my only one that's not titled, right? And he's my youngest, and Kyle's like, man, I think he's the best dog you have. Right now, I don't agree with that necessarily. Now, do I think he could be? Yeah, I really do. But he's not there yet. But his perspective was the only dog that wasn't titled was better than all of them that were, So it's a really interesting. I don't think there's an answer. I think we may strive, towards an answer at some point on this. But I see the toll this takes. I mean, I've got my buddy Brett that's down in Arkansas. I mean, that dude, pro trainer. He hunt tests all the time, all over the place, and it absolutely wears on him. And I ask him, I'm like, how many of these dogs that you title out, how many of them would you own? He's like, very, very few, but they all title out, right? So I think if you got nothing else out of this conversation, my hope would be is that maybe there were just some light shed here. I do believe if you're one person gosh, I was really leaning towards doing a hunt test. I hope this didn't come across as overly negative. I don't think any of us meant it that way. I think we're sharing some experiences here. What I do think it is great for is if you have one dog or one or two dogs, and you want a measuring stick, you want something that pushes you forward, gives you the carrot to strive for at the end of the stick. It does that. And it does, like, for Eric, he went through that weekend. He's like, gosh, I'm coming out of here. Here are the two things I'm really going to work on. But he's focusing on that because of what he saw in that test, right? So it does I'd say magnify some things. You can be like, okay, before season hits, this is what I need to be doing. So I certainly would. I'm the same way. I think Eric, you said this earlier. Like I would encourage anyone to go do this. Go run it once, go see it. I think there is value in that, but I think just look at it through the right lens. For me, I don't drink the Kool-Aid as far as like I'm not all in on this thing, but I also understand the value and I understand the significance. I understand the pros. I understand the cons. I understand what I love about it, what I really dislike about it, and I understand it's a game. That this is not hunting, and there's a lot of situations we could talk about from the hunting standpoint, but I really wanted to keep it focused on tests here for this one.
Yeah, I would just echo again, if you're, and I'm speaking in Retriever Roadmap members because that's the people I talk to the most, are people like me who are training on their own. Go do these things. Go do the started. We had a member there last weekend doing it. The first day it just didn't work out, but the second day he was ecstatic. He got a pass out of it, and it was a sense of accomplishment. I could see it in his face. This is awesome. I mean, I did this. And then go challenge yourself to it. For me, it's a challenge. The season tests, I'm glad some of them that day were set up hard. I don't want something easy that I've been doing. I want to pass this, that I felt like I accomplished something. And it's okay to fail. Failure equals growth. You got to go through that process. I walked off the line the second day, didn't pass, and it's only going to make me stronger. And, this is a good thing. I just think you got to figure out where it fits in your training and, where it fits for you. And for some, they need it, and others, you may not need to do this stuff.
Mm-hmm. I think your comment on so Lance, hopefully you don't mind us calling us out, but this was fantastic. This was a great situation. So Lance has a awesome little dog in Lou. We've watched her run and strike forest trainings, and he came on first day. She failed. And I was like, what in the world? Like, this dog's dynamite, right? And he's like, you know what? I actually thought about it as I was driving here. I don't think she's ever had a duck in her mouth, right? So what he did is he took a duck from the test, did some retrieves with her that evening. She went back, looked like an absolute all-star. The second day, boom, boom, everything was flawless. But on a hunt, like, this is one of those things that was great for him to think about before an actual hunt because, an actual hunt, shoot, you may not get a whole lot of opportunities on that. And if she doesn't go out and pick that duck up, that first hunt is going to be frustrating, right? And so, again, I think this is just one of those situations that there is some positives. I think there's some negatives. Brian, you have any final thoughts here?
I mean, I just, at the end of the day, if folks are listening and they're maybe on the fence, just go try it out. And it may be great for you, and at the same time, you may go through the process and be like, you know what? I learned some things. It was an interesting day, but it's not for me. Either way, I think it can't hurt to go through it, and then you can decide your destiny, which, to be honest, it's parallels perfectly with the whole Retriever Roadmap philosophy, right? Like, everybody's going to have a different way to get there. If the hunt tests are definitely a part of your roadmap, then fantastic. But if you maybe take a different path and you determine that it's not for you, that's fantastic too, right? It's all about, to me, objectives and methods. The objectives is we want to get our dogs in a position that satisfies our needs, whatever that might be. We each have different expectations and goals, but ultimately there's different methods to accomplish that goal, that objective. And so I think it's part of the system of just identifying which path, which roadmap is going to be best for you.
For sure. Yeah, I think that's great. Well, thank you guys again for last weekend. Thanks for hanging out, going to the test. I was very proud of how both of you guys handled that. Both of you guys were overly prepared going into that. That was fantastic. And thank you for spending the time here today to kind of share our thoughts and experiences. And hopefully everybody out there loved it and was able to take something from this. So thank you guys. You guys have a great rest of your week. And for everybody listening, I will come back with you guys soon and have another topic for you guys. So have a fantastic rest of your week. It's crazy to think about that we're already halfway through or over halfway through July. Season will be here before you know it, especially if you're up here in the north. So we've got like 5-6 weeks left. So make sure if you have not been out grinding, get out there, get training going, because season will be here before you know it. So take advantage of this summer weather. So hope you guys have a great, fantastic rest of your week, and we'll talk to you soon. Thanks for listening. Be sure to follow us on Facebook and Instagram. Leave us a review on iTunes, and a special thank you to DUK, because without them, we couldn't do what we do here, bringing this information to you.